Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Then, crash. The front door burst open. Blood spread beneath her. One arm bent at an unnatural angle. The entire restaurant froze. A bowl slipped from a worker's hands and shattered across the floor. "No way," someone whispered. "That's the Silver Blade." Silence swallowed the room. Serena Veilblood, the youngest S-rank hunter in history. A woman who had never once been seen defeated. Yet now, she could barely breathe. Her trembling fingers reached toward the counter, then fell still. Only one person remained calm. Kael looked at her, then sighed. "No." Aunt Mira turned. "What do you mean, no?" "She's an S-rank. So? Trouble." One customer quietly asked, "Should we call the Hunter Association?" No one answered. Aunt Mira looked at Serena, then back at Kael. "She's dying." Kael didn't reply. Smack! Aunt Mira's hand landed on the back of his head. "You stubborn boy." Kael rubbed the spot. Another sigh. "Fine." He walked over, lifted Serena into his arms as though she weighed nothing. The customers silently stepped aside. Kael stopped in front of the old wooden door leading to the back room. His hand rested on the doorknob. "This is going to be a pain." Without another word, he disappeared into the back room. The back room was small. A single oil lamp flickered quietly beside a narrow bed. Kael gently laid Serena onto the bed. He examined her injuries without saying a word. She had lost far too much blood. Kael quietly pulled a chair closer and sat beside her. For a few moments, he simply stared. "You're lucky. If Aunt hadn't been here, I would have left you outside." Kael reached for a clean cloth and began wiping away the blood around the wounds. After cleaning the wounds, he leaned back in his chair. His eyes drifted toward the old wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. He remained silent, thinking. "Guess I don't have much choice." He slowly closed his eyes. Darkness swallowed everything. Silence. Then a single drop of water echoed into the darkness. Kael slowly opened his eyes. The small back room was gone. Above him stretched a sky unlike any in the human world. Only countless streams of shimmering light flowing across an endless black horizon. On both sides, life stretched farther than the eye could see. Ingredients: towering herbs glowing with golden veins, trees bearing crystal fruits, flowers blooming with liquid starlight. Everywhere he looked, the impossible had become ordinary. Kael slipped both hands into his pockets. Still as noisy as ever. A glowing herb chimed softly in the distance. He continued walking as if he had taken this path thousands of times before. Eventually he stopped in front of a single silver potato resting beneath a beam of pale light. Kael crouched down. "Moon milk." He reached toward it. The moment his fingertips touched its skin, the entire field trembled. From the mist, giant rabbits slowly emerged, one after another. Kael looked up. "Morning." One rabbit stepped forward. Its enormous nose nudged his shoulder. Kael absent-mindedly scratched behind its ear. "Good." The others quietly returned to grazing. Silence settled over the field once more. Kael crouched beside the glowing potato. With one gentle pull, it slipped free from the silver soil. He brushed the dirt away, then slipped it into his pocket. He goes back to the endless pantry where he first sat. He stood, looked across the endless pantry. Countless impossible ingredients stretching beyond the horizon. Maybe tomorrow. He closed his eyes. Darkness swallowed everything. Kael opened his eyes. The small back room returned. Nothing had changed, except the silver potato resting quietly in his hand. He walked into the tiny kitchen behind the restaurant. Nothing looked expensive. Nothing looked magical. Kael washed the silver potato beneath cool water. He peeled it with slow, practiced movements. The silver skin curled away in one long ribbon. He dropped the pieces into the simmering broth. A gentle aroma immediately filled the room. Warm, comforting. Kael quietly stirred the pot. No chanting, no magic circles, no overflowing mana. Just soup. He tasted the broth with a wooden spoon. "Needs another minute." The silver pieces slowly melted into the soup as if they had never existed. A soft smile appeared on Kael's face. "There you are." He poured the finished broth into a small wooden bowl. Simple, plain, ordinary. No one looking at it would ever guess that it was worth more than an entire kingdom. Kael picked up the bowl and quietly walked back towards Serena's room. Kael quietly entered the room. Serena hadn't moved. Her breathing was still shallow. Her face had grown even paler. He placed the warm bowl on the small wooden table beside the bed. Supporting her shoulders with one arm, he carefully lifted her just enough to bring the spoon to her lips. "Sorry, I know this isn't exactly polite." One small spoonful. Then, the broken fingers on Serena's left hand twitched. Kael noticed. The shallow rise and fall of her breathing slowly became steadier. The deep sword wounds across her body stopped bleeding. Not instantly, not dramatically, quietly, as though her body simply remembered how to heal. Kael watched in silence. "Good." He placed the empty bowl back onto the table, then stood up. "I'll leave the rest to you." He turned off the oil lamp. The room became dark once more. Only the sound of steady breathing remained. For the first time that night, Serena was no longer dying. Warmth. That was the first thing Serena felt. Not pain, not fear. Warmth. Her eyes slowly opened. Rain tapped softly against a nearby window. Beyond the door, she heard dishes clinking, people laughing. For a moment, she frowned. "I'm alive?" The last thing she remembered was blood, her running darkness. She instinctively reached for the wounds across her chest. Nothing. The deep cuts were gone. Only faint scars remained. She quickly grabbed her broken arm. It moved without pain. She opened and closed her hand. Impossible. No healing spell could do this. Not this completely, not this quickly. Her breathing slowed. She looked toward the closed door. The smell drifting through it was unmistakable. Fresh bread, hot soup. Her stomach growled. Seriously? The first thing her body wanted was another bowl. Serena looked at the bowl for a long moment. The aroma alone made her mouth water. Just one bite. The warm broth touched her lips. A gentle warmth spread through her body, comforting. She took another spoonful, then another. Before she realized it, the bowl was empty. Something felt different. The exhaustion buried deep inside her body quietly faded. Her breathing became lighter. Even the constant aches she had carried through years of battle had disappeared. She immediately closed her eyes. Mana flowed through her body. She examined every injury, every strained muscle, every scar left behind by countless battles. Nothing. Everything felt whole. Serena slowly opened her eyes. Impossible. She had been treated by the kingdom's greatest healers, consumed priceless elixirs, received blessings from high priests. None of them had restored her body like this. The door opened. An older woman stepped inside. A gentle smile rested on her face. Oh, so you're finally awake. Serena instinctively tried to stand. I'm sorry for causing... The woman raised a hand. No apologizing. She walked over and placed the back of her hand against Serena's forehead. Good, the fever's gone. Serena looked at her. You knew I'd wake up? Aunt Mira chuckled. Eventually, she picked up the empty bowl. You finished everything. Good girl. For a moment, Serena simply stared. It had been years since someone had spoken to her like that. Not as an S rank, just as someone recovering. Thank you, Aunt Mira smiled. We couldn't leave an injured person outside. She turned toward the door. If you're still hungry, dinner will be ready soon. Serena blinked. Again? You've been asleep for 2 days. You'll need proper food. 2 days. Serena's eyes widened because she had expected hours and not days. Aunt Mira paused at the doorway. Oh, and don't worry about paying. My nephew don't mind it. A quiet laugh escaped Serena. He's certainly unique. Aunt Mira smiled. He is. Then she quietly left the room, leaving Serena alone with a thought she couldn't put into words. Serena slowly stepped out of the room. The first thing she noticed was the smell. Fresh bread, warm soup, grilled onions. She looked around. Old wooden tables. Workers in dusty clothes laughing together after a long day's work. An elderly couple quietly sharing a single bowl of soup. A little girl happily swinging her feet while waiting for her meal. No tension, no fear. No one looked worried. It was peaceful. Serena stood frozen. This couldn't be the place. She looked toward the entrance. The same cracked wooden door, the same faded sign outside. She really was still here. One of the older customers looked up from his meal. Oh, you finally woke up. Feeling better? Serena hesitated. Yes, good. He nodded once, then returned to his soup. That was all. No shock, no excitement, no whispers. No one said, the silver blade. To everyone inside this tiny restaurant, she was simply another customer. That realization felt strangely comforting. Across the room, Kael quietly continued washing dishes. Your dinner's getting cold. He pointed toward an empty chair. So, sit. For the first time in years, Serena obeyed an order without thinking about rank. She simply sat down. Kael returned a few minutes later. This time, he wasn't carrying soup. He placed a simple plate in front of Serena. Golden egg fried rice, a perfectly grilled piece of chicken, fresh vegetables, and a small bowl of clear broth. Nothing extravagant, but there's something mystical and legendary feeling about it. Serena looked at the plate. This is for me? Kael nodded. You've been asleep for 2 days. Soup isn't enough. Eat first. You're strangely bossy. I'm cooking. That makes me the boss. For some reason, she couldn't argue with that. She picked up the spoon. The moment she tasted it, she stopped chewing. There was an explosion of flavor. Rich, layered, and impossibly deep. Yet somehow, it wasn't overwhelming. Instead, it tasted like home, like a meal waiting after an exhausting day. Without realizing it, she took another bite, then another. Kael quietly continued wiping the counter. Good? Serena slowly nodded. I've eaten at imperial banquets. I've dined with kings. I've tasted dishes prepared by the finest chefs in the continent. None of them tasted like this. Kael shrugged. They probably overcomplicated it. How? Kael looked up. How what? How and why did you save me? You knew I was an S rank. Our body can't be healed normally. Also, you knew trouble would follow. So, why and how? Kael rinsed another plate. Because Aunt said so. Serena blinked. That's all? Kael nodded. That's all. He placed the clean plate onto the shelf. For some reason, that answer stayed with her longer than any grand speech ever had. Elsewhere, the kingdom had not stopped searching. Scouts returned one after another. No mana traces. No sign of Serena. Rain continued to fall. The officer lowered the latest report. Again, a hunter stepped forward. We've searched every route. There's nothing. The officer looked toward the distant forest. Expand the search. If she's alive, we bring her home. No one questioned the order. Within moments, the search parties disappeared into the rain once more. No one realized that less than 5 kilometers away, the woman they had spent 2 days searching for was quietly eating fried rice inside a tiny restaurant in the kingdom's poorest district. The Hunter Association headquarters had not slept for 2 days. No sign of Serena. Then, the massive entrance doors slowly opened. Footsteps echoed across the hall. One by one, heads turned. A young woman woman stood at the entrance. Her black cloak was torn from battle, yet she stood perfectly straight. Within seconds, dozens of guild hunters surrounded her. "You're alive! What happened? Who treated your injuries?" "The scouting team couldn't find you anywhere." Serena quietly listened, then looked down at her own hand. She remembered the tiny restaurant, the warm fried rice, Aunt Mira's smile, Kael's tired expression as he washed dishes. Someone suddenly grabbed her wrist. The association's chief healer. His expression slowly changed from relief to confusion. This can't be right. He examined her arm again, then her shoulder, then the scars that no longer existed. His hands began to tremble. "Who healed you?" The entire hall fell silent. Serena opened her mouth. For a brief moment, she almost answered. Then she remembered Kael's words. Not me. He had hidden the truth. Not for glory, not for money, simply because he wanted a peaceful life. Serena closed her mouth again. "I don't know." It was the first lie she had told in years. The next few days, night had fallen over the kingdom. For the first time in years, Serena walked to the poorest district. The familiar wooden sign came into view. It felt like coming home. "You're back," Serena laughed softly. "I guess I am." His gaze shifted past her, toward the rooftop across the street. A quiet sigh escaped him. "Next time, lose your tail before you come here." Serena stopped. "Tail? The girl. She's been following you since you left the Hunter Guild." The rooftop looked completely empty. Nothing. Not a shadow. Not a sound. High above them, Arya's heartbeat skipped. Arya instinctively touched the hilt of her sword, then stopped. Then Kael casually waved. "If you're going to follow a customer, you might as well come inside." Kael frowned. "If you're planning to keep sitting on the roof, at least order something." Serena stared. "You can actually see her?" Kael blinked. "I can hear her." Arya slowly dropped from the rooftop. She landed lightly in front of the restaurant. "Who exactly are you? A cook?" Aunt Mira peeked out from the kitchen. "Oh, another customer. Come in. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes." Arya looked between the smiling old woman and the young man who had effortlessly discovered her. Nothing made sense. She stepped inside. Then the ground shook violently. The laughter inside the restaurant stopped. A deafening roar echoed through the district. Kael slowly closed his eyes. He placed the plate onto the counter. Dinner's going to be late again. A massive black-scaled beast crashed through the narrow streets. Several A-rank hunters pursued it desperately. "Don't let it reach the civilians." Monster is frightened, eyes locked onto the brightest place in the district. The restaurant. It charged. Serena's chair scraped violently across the floor. She was already moving. Silver light flashed. The restaurant door burst open. Crash! One clean slash. The monster staggered. Its enormous body collapsed before it could take another step. The pursuing hunters froze. "She's the Silver Blade." Relief washed over their faces. "We made it." But before anyone could lower their guard, the monster's body slammed into the remains of a damaged warehouse. The entire front wall collapsed toward the restaurant. Serena turned. Too far. Arya's hand gripped the hilt of her sword. The world seemed to slow. Then crack. No explosion, no shockwave, no blinding light. The falling stone simply separated. Every beam, every brick, every fragment, cut into hundreds of perfectly smooth pieces. The A-rank hunters stared upward. "What did that?" Serena slowly lowered her sword. "That wasn't my attack. This was something else." On the rooftop, Arya's golden eyes never left the restaurant. She hadn't seen anyone move. She hadn't sensed mana. She hadn't even heard a blade leave its sheath. Impossible. The restaurant door creaked open. Kael stepped outside carrying a broom. He glanced toward Serena. "Next time, please kill it farther away." The A-rank hunters carried the monster away. Inside the restaurant, dinner continued, as if nothing had happened. Serena watched him in silence. The same man who had casually protected everyone. Kael swept the last pieces of stone into a small pile. A heavy leather pouch rested on the counter. "This belongs to you." Kael glanced at it, then gently pushed it back. "No, you saved my life." "I know." He simply looked around the restaurant. Then he looked back at Serena. "Why would I accept all this for something I don't need? Keep it. I already have everything I want." Serena slowly picked up the pouch. She didn't argue. She simply nodded. "Thank you." He tied on his apron. "Tomorrow's special is curry." A small smile appeared on Serena's face. She quietly walked toward the door. Arya watched the closed door for several seconds. Then she looked toward Kael. "Who are you?" Kael continued washing the dishes. "A cook." Aunt Mira walked over carrying a fresh plate. "Eat before it gets cold." Arya looked down at the meal, then back at Kael. For the first time in years, she had no idea what she was looking at. Night returned. Customers gradually filled the worn wooden tables. Workers laughed over hot bowls of soup after another exhausting day. An elderly couple quietly shared a loaf of fresh bread. The familiar warmth returned, as if the outside world had never existed. Serena sat at her usual table. Across from her, Arya silently stirred the soup. Neither spoke. Behind the counter, Kael chopped vegetables with the same relaxed rhythm as always. For a brief moment, everything was peaceful. Then, the knife stopped. Kael slowly looked toward the closed restaurant door. Outside, the wind suddenly died. The laughter inside the restaurant faded. A strange pressure settled over the district. One customer frowned. "Do you feel that?" Another slowly looked outside. "Why is it so quiet?" Serena's expression changed. She had felt this before. Not from a monster, not from a hunter, from something far older, Across the table, Arya was already gripping the handle of her spoon. Her golden eyes narrowed toward the entrance. Neither of them realized Kael had already gone back to chopping vegetables. Right on time. Far beyond the restaurant, the kingdom had begun to notice. One by one, the torches along the city walls dim, not extinguished. High atop the Hunter Association, a veteran A-rank hunter suddenly stopped walking. His eyes widened. No, his partner frowned. What is it? His voice had become barely a whisper. That aura. The color drained from his face. Impossible. Across the capital, guild headquarters burst into motion. Hunters abandoned their meals. Weapons were drawn. Emergency bells echoed through the night. What happened? Where is it? Confirm the source. Messenger birds filled the sky. No one knew what had appeared. Only one thing was certain. Whatever had awakened could not be allowed to reach the city. Meanwhile, in the poorest district, the tiny restaurant remained warmly lit. Inside, Kael quietly finished chopping the last vegetable. He wiped the knife with a clean cloth. Aunt, could you make one extra serving tonight? She smiled. I was already planning to. Kael gave a small nod. Outside, the pressure grew heavier, closer. Outside, the night sky darkened. Not from clouds, from something moving above them. A shadow, fast enough to swallow the moon. A child pointed upward. Mama! No one answered. Then, thud, the ground shook, not violently, heavily, as though something unimaginably large had taken a single step. Another, thud, windows trembled. Loose tiles slid from rooftops. Far down the street, a pair of enormous golden eyes slowly emerged from the darkness. Ancient, watching. The creature stepped into the moonlight, towering black fur, massive curved horns. Each breath drifted into the cold night like mist. Its paws crushed the stone road beneath their weight. Yet, it wasn't roaring, it wasn't attacking. It simply walked. Every hunter lining the rooftops instinctively tightened their grip on their weapons. No one dared move. Inside the restaurant, Serena slowly stood. Her hand rested on the hilt of her sword. Across from her, Arya's expression had completely changed. For the first time, there was unmistakable fear in her eyes. The beast continued forward. Its gaze never wandered. It remained fixed. On the small restaurant at the end of the street, Arya couldn't look away. That's not a monster. Serena slowly nodded. No, it existed long before monsters. Far across the rooftops, the hunters remained frozen. One veteran quietly lowered his weapon. My grandfather once told me that if you ever see one, pray it isn't looking for you. Silence spread through the district. No one moved. No one dared breathe too loudly. The ancient guardian took one slow step forward, then another. Its golden eyes never left the warm light spilling from the restaurant windows. Inside, Kael calmly adjusted the flame beneath the soup. Almost ready, Serena slowly drew her sword. Silver light shimmered along the blade. If it moves, I'll stop it. Arya quietly stepped in front of the restaurant. One hand rested on her sword. The other trembled. Not from fear, from instinct. Every instinct she had ever trusted was screaming. Run. The guardian lowered its head. Its ancient eyes remained fixed on the warm light spilling through the restaurant windows. One step, another. The ground groaned beneath its weight. Then it stopped. Serena frowned. The beast didn't roar. It didn't attack. It simply sat down, like an enormous wolf patiently waiting outside a house. Silence. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. One hunter whispered from a nearby rooftop. Why isn't it attacking? Inside the restaurant, guess the line starts outside tonight. Aunt Mira smiled as she ladled fresh stew into the bowl. Poor thing. It must be hungry. Outside, the guardian's ears twitched. Its massive tail slowly swept across the empty street. For the first time in centuries, the creature looked almost patient. Minutes passed. The guardian simply waited. Serena never lowered her sword. Arya's eyes never left the ancient creature. Then, the restaurant door slid open. Kael stepped outside carrying a large wooden bowl. Steam slowly drifted into the night. Arya frowned. You're actually going out? Kael looked at her. It waited. Wouldn't be polite. He walked past them. No hesitation, no caution. Kael looked no larger than one of the guardian's claws. He stopped beneath its enormous head. Sorry, you waited longer than usual. The guardian let out a deep breath. Warm air rolled across the empty street. Kael lifted the bowl. The guardian gently lowered its head. Carefully, almost delicately, it ate from Kael's hands. Silence. No roar, no destruction. Only the quiet sound of an ancient being enjoying its meal. Kael scratched beneath one of its massive horn. Good. The guardian slowly closed its golden eyes. For just a moment, it looked less like something capable of ending kingdoms, and more like an old companion who had finally come home. No one spoke. No one even dared breathe. A veteran hunter felt his knees weaken. Impossible! Arya stared at Kael. What are you? Kael looked up at the guardian. Tomorrow, the guardian gave a slow, satisfied rumble. Then it turned. One heavy step, another. Its enormous silhouette disappeared into the night. The crushing pressure covering the district vanished. Kael looked at the empty bowl. Aunt. We'll need a bigger bowl tomorrow, she smiled. I'll make one. The restaurant's warm light spilled quietly onto the empty street, as if tonight had been completely ordinary. After several nights of reports, the guildmasters finally agreed to investigate the restaurant and the people who was coming there themselves. Hunters sparred across the arena. For Serena, it was simply another day. One instructor tossed her a practice sword. Ready? Serena nodded. Whenever you are. Across the arena, a reinforced training golem slowly lumbered forward. Its body was forged from enchanted steel, built to withstand the strength of S-rank hunters. The instructor raised his hand. Begin! The golem charged. Serena stepped forward. One swing, clang, silence. The upper half of the golem slowly slid from the lower half. The arena fell silent. The instructor blinked. Did Did she just... The massive construct collapsed into two perfectly clean pieces. No explosion, no powerful technique, just one ordinary swing. Serena frowned. That's strange. She looked down at the practice sword. I barely put any strength into that. The instructor stared at the destroyed golem. A cold sweat rolled down his face. Bring another one. A second golem entered. Then a third. Each one ended the same way. One strike, one clean cut. No effort. High above the arena, hidden behind a glass balcony. Several guildmasters watched in silence. One of them finally spoke. She wasn't this strong. Another slowly nodded. Not even close. Silence. The guildmaster looked toward Serena once more. Find out what changed. Elsewhere, an emergency flare lit up the night sky. A monster raid. A-rank hunters surrounded a massive armored beast. Their attacks barely left a scratch. Fall back! It's too strong! The beast roared. One hunter was sent crashing through a building. Then, a silver blur flashed past. Arya. She drew her sword. One exchange. 2, 3. The beast was stronger than she expected. It swung again. Arya stepped aside, too easily. Her body had already moved before she gave the command. She frowned. What? The beast charged. This time, everything felt slower. Its movements, its breathing, even the flow of mana around it. Without thinking, Arya's sword moved. One clean slash. Silence. The armored beast split apart. Its massive body collapsed onto the street. The remaining hunters stood frozen. Captain? Since when were you that strong? Arya looked down at her own hands. She remembered the warm bowl of soup, the fried rice, the simple restaurant. Without saying another word, she sheathed her sword and disappeared into the night. The Hunter Association, a quiet meeting room. Several guildmasters sat around a long table. No one spoke. A report lay at the center. One page, 2 names. Serena Veilblood, Arya. One guildmaster broke the silence. Both of them. They've been visiting the same place. Another looked down at the report. Every night. A third frowned. A restaurant? Silence. Someone finally laughed. You're telling me 2 of our strongest hunters suddenly became stronger? Because of food? No one answered. The guildmaster slowly stood. Whether it's true or not, we're going. He folded the report. On the last page, only one address was written. Night Owl Restaurant. Open only at night. Far away. Kael quietly flipped a piece of grilled chicken. Almost done. The little bell above the restaurant door rang. A new customer entered. Night. Several luxurious carriages stopped at the edge of the poorest district. Guildmasters stepped out one after another. Their eyes swept across the narrow streets. One frowned. This is the place? Another unfolded the report. Night Owl Restaurant. He looked up. A small, worn wooden restaurant stood quietly at the end of the street. Paint peeling. Old windows. A faded sign. Silence. One guildmaster laughed. Someone crossed the wrong address. Another shook his head. 2 S-ranks became stronger. Because of this, the restaurant door opened. Aunt Mira stepped outside carrying a bag of trash. She noticed the group. Oh, you boys here for dinner? The guildmasters looked at each other. Her? One of them sighed. Let's just get this over with. They walked toward the restaurant. Inside, Kael didn't even look up. Welcome, he continued peeling potatoes. The little bell above the restaurant door rang. One, then another, then another. 5 figures entered the restaurant. Each wore a different guild crest. The conversations inside quietly faded. Not because the customers recognized them, but because they carried themselves like people who had never been ignored. One guildmaster looked around. Old wooden tables, a cracked ceiling, workers eating dinner, nothing extraordinary. His expression hardened. This? Another looked toward the open kitchen. A young man was quietly stirring a pot. Without looking up, Kael spoke. 5? The guildmasters blinked. Kael reached for another stack of bowls. Give me a minute. Silence. One guildmaster frowned. Do you know who we are? No. He sprinkled in a pinch of salt. Table by the window is empty. Another guildmaster let out a dry laugh. He's serious. Aunt Mira walked over with a smile. Please have a seat. Dinner will be ready soon. The guildmasters looked at each other. For the first time in years, no one had welcomed them as rulers, only as customers. Aunt Mira placed 5 bowls on the table. Here you go. Today's special. The guildmasters looked down. Simple stew. Fresh bread. Nothing more. One of them frowned. This is it? Another picked up the spoon. Let's just finish this. He took one bite. Silence. He stopped moving. The others slowly looked at him. What? Without answering, he took another bite, then another. The remaining guildmasters quietly tasted theirs. The restaurant fell silent. Even the regular customers smiled to themselves. They had seen this reaction before. One guildmaster slowly lowered his spoon. His tired eyes widened. My shoulder, an old scar he'd carried for over 20 years, no longer hurt. Another guildmaster blinked. My mana. It recovered. A third slowly clenched his fist. The stiffness in his fingers, gone. Silence. One by one, they looked toward the open kitchen. Kael was quietly peeling potatoes, as though none of this concerned him. The guildmasters exchanged a glance. For the first time since arriving, no one doubted the report anymore. The last bowl was empty. Silence. One guildmaster slowly stood. He looked toward Kael. Young man. Kael didn't look up. I'll be direct. You'll come with us. The restaurant grew quiet. Kael continued peeling potatoes. No. The guildmaster blinked. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. Another guildmaster stepped forward. You don't understand. With your talent, you belong in the strongest guild. Kael placed another potato onto the cutting board. I already have a job. You'll have wealth. I have enough. You'll have influence. too troublesome. You'll have the finest kitchen in the kingdom. Kael finally looked up, then glanced around the restaurant. The old wooden tables, the familiar counter. Aunt Mira quietly washing dishes. The regular customers finishing their meals. He looked back at the guildmasters. Mine's fine. Silence. For the first time in years, someone had refused them. Not out of fear, not out of arrogance, simply because he didn't want what they offered. One guildmaster slowly clenched his fist. No one turns us down. One guildmaster stepped forward. His mana erupted. The wooden floor trembled. Several customers instinctively looked up. You'll regret that answer. Another guildmaster slowly reached for his weapon. The restaurant grew quiet. Aunt Mira sighed. Not again. Kael placed the potato he was peeling onto the cutting board. He slowly raised one hand. Nothing happened. Then, clink. A spoon slipped from a guildmaster's fingers. He couldn't move. His eyes widened. Another tried to draw his sword. Nothing. A third attempted to speak. Not a sound came out. One by one, every guildmaster stood frozen where they were. Only their eyes could move. The entire restaurant fell silent. Kael lowered his hand. Good. He picked up the potato again and continued peeling. Without looking at them, he spoke calmly. People come here to eat, not to fight. Silence. After a long moment, Kael sighed. You can leave now. He snapped his fingers. The pressure vanished. The guildmasters staggered backward. Cold sweat covered their faces. None of them spoke. None of them even looked at Kael again. They simply turned and walked out. The little bell above the door rang. One finally whispered, "We were never recruiting a chef. We were threatening something we couldn't even understand." No one argued. Behind them, warm laughter drifted from the little restaurant. Dinner had already continued. Night fell. The little restaurant opened as always. Outside, the line already stretched beyond the end of the street. Merchants, hunters, guildmasters, nobles, priests. Even the king quietly stood among them. No royal escort, no special treatment. Farther back, the first guardian rested peacefully at the very end of the line. Children quietly pointed at it. The guardian simply wagged its enormous tail. Nobody dared complain. Inside, nothing had changed. A tired construction worker finished his stew. He placed a few worn coins on the table. Best meal I've had all week. Aunt Mira smiled. Come again tomorrow. The little bell rang as he left. Kael wiped the table clean. Next, the restaurant door opened. A man wearing a simple traveling cloak quietly stepped inside. Door opens. He removes the hood. King smiles. Oh, tonight, I'm just another customer. Table by the window. Dinner will be a few minutes. Outside, the line moved forward by one. The first guardian stood, then patiently waited again. Inside, Kael returned to peeling potatoes. Aunt Mira looked at the nearly empty basket. We're almost out, Kael sighed. Guess we'll need more potatoes tomorrow. The little restaurant continued serving dinner, as if nothing in the world had ever changed.